Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to yet another The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Ugly. Not good. This time it's on the Hyundai Genesis Coupe. Just want to say I absolutely love this car. So please tell me if you own one of these, if I got anything wrong, because I would feel ashamed, because I love these cars so much and I devote my life to this car. Anyway, let's get right into it. In case you guys are new here, the way this works is, first of all, we go over the car itself, the trim levels that it came in, the engines that it had, the power, the transmissions, all that good stuff. Then we get into the modifiability of it, baby, what people usually do when modifying it. And then after that, we finally get into the good, the bad, and the ugly, which we'll explain to when we get there. And lastly, I give you an educated opinion on if I think you should buy the car based on what kind of style you're going for. Anyway, the Hyundai Genesis Coupe, let's get right into it. It's a rear-wheel drive sports car. Every single model of Genesis Coupe is rear-wheel drive, and it was produced from the years 2008 to 2016 and actually had a great amount of changes within those years. First off, I want to start by saying that the car went by 2 different chassis codes depending on what year you get. If you get the car from the year 2008 to 2012, it went by the chassis code BK1. And if you went from 2013 to 2016, it went by the chassis code BK2. Since the car, even though it does kind of look similar, they had a facelift and they have different engines in them, and so they are built differently, so they have different chassis codes. Anyway, the car is actually, surprisingly, a South Korean car. So even though, when I first saw this car, and I'm sure you guys probably thought this too, it does give off those major, JDM, Toge style vibes. It's actually not a JDM car. It's a South Korean car, which I think is pretty cool. And it was only available in South Korea from the years 2008 to 2010. And we finally got it overseas in February of 2009. But for some reason, it was labeled as a 2010 model. Don't ask me why. Car makers are some weird folks, all right? They do some weird things, and I can't explain it. They just don't make any sense. Anyway, from the years 2008 to 2012, the car came with 2 different engine options, either a 2-liter turbocharged inline-4 that made 210 horsepower and 223 foot-pounds of torque, which is actually pretty decent, but nothing to write home about. I find it pretty cool how it has 13 more foot-pounds of torque than horsepower. Usually the foot-pounds of torque is actually less than the horsepower, so that's pretty damn cool. And also the BK1 came with a 3.8-liter V6 that made 306 horsepower and 266 foot-pounds of torque. Both of those engines came with different trim levels, and all these trim levels were called either the base, the R-Spec, the Grand Touring, or the Track, with the Track model having actual performance upgrades like bigger brakes and stiffer suspension, and all the other trim levels kind of just had like things that you don't really care too much about, like better AC, better infotainment systems, push to start, better paddle shifters, stuff like that. Nicer seats, I know, is one of the things in the R-Spec. But anyway, in the years 2013 to 2016, or the BK2 model, the car not only got a huge facelift that looks pretty damn good. It's still arguable to this day which one looks better. It's kind of a personal opinion thing. I'll put 2 pictures up right now of the pre-facelift, and I'll put a picture up of the actual facelift so you can see and make your educated opinion based off your own research, I guess. But it also, on top of the facelift, got a bunch of upgrades, making this the one that you want to get if you're going for strictly speed. These cars, the BK2 cars, got a bunch of little speed upgrades. It had the same exact engines as before, but now the 2.0 turbo made 271 horsepower and 275 foot-pounds of torque, and the 3.8-liter V6 made 348 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque. That is a pretty damn good jump in just 3 years. I think that Hyundai knocked it out of the park. Every car was only a coupe, all right? There was no convertibles, there was no sedan options available. However, there is another Hyundai Genesis called just the Genesis. That's a 4-door sedan, looks nothing like the coupe, and doesn't have the same engines in it, so I highly recommend staying away from that car. They're just a luxury car. They were not meant to be fast or cool or anything like that. Just keep that in mind. They're not the same exact car. Also, the car came with either a 5-speed auto in early years, an 8-speed auto with paddle shifters in later years, and a 6-speed manual for every single year. But the auto is actually still a pretty decent choice on these cars. So if you can only get an auto, or if you don't want a manual, that's okay. The auto is still does really well. Now let's get into modifying it, and right off the bat, if you're going for the speed route, if you're like Speed Racer himself, everyone always says to go with the 2.0 turbo, since apparently the engine is just better built for handling it. But most of this time, people tend to go with show cars for these builds. Most people don't really go with like race cars when they're building these cars. Huge wings, wide body kits, they're all the rage for them. I mean, you see them all the time. It's like a common, you know, stereotype about these cars is that they're always wide bodied and have huge wings, which honestly, it's kind of hard to argue them though, since they do look really good when they put those on. I don't know what it is. The body lines of this car just work really well for wide body kits. Since they are rear-wheel drive, they can be drifted, but it's kind of on the fence. There hasn't been enough people that have drifted them yet to be able to tell if they're actually good for it or not. But they seem like they're okay. It just seems like they're kind of suffer the same fate as like the G35, the G37s, and that is that they're a little bit heavy and have long wheelbases, which is the opposite of what you want when drifting. You want short wheelbase and lightweight cars. People rarely get into performance when they do these cars. That's why most of them, like I said, is a show car build. Not a lot of people do drifting. Drag racing and circuit racing is pretty much just out the window. You never really see a Genesis Coupe doing either of those things. But once again, with enough ambition, you can definitely get it there. If you want to drift a car, if you want to drag race, or you want to circuit race a car, you definitely can. It's just going to take a lot longer than if you were to buy a different car. But now it's time to get into the meat and potatoes, baby. The Cracker Barrel meat and potatoes. The good, the bad, and the ugly. The way this works is, first off, I go over the good, which are things that are just yippee, happy old great things about the car. Then I get into the bad, which are things that are like, they're alright. You can take it, you can leave it. I don't know. It's up to you. Then we get into the ugly. And the ugly are just things that, like, you know, you mention it, and Clint Eastwood is going to come into your door and shoot you in the face. Alright? I can't say shoot. That's a bad. Oh, I said it again. Damn it. Anyway, let's start with the good since I'm just a happy guy. First off is the car has a ton of really cool modern technology that I don't know. It really does it for me. I like these little like touches that these newer cars are having to them nowadays. It has touchscreen infotainment systems. It has keyless entry. It has push to start. It has paddle shifters on the autos and many more. It's just a great thing if you're looking for like, if you really care about interior and like the driving feel when you're in the car, it's a good thing to have. Next is the looks of this car are damn near perfect. Whether you get the facelift or pre-facelift, I still think they did a really good job of making it look extremely classy and sporty, all while still being extremely slick and fast. It's just the lines on this car, they just work so well. Next is the engine options are actually pretty good. Since it is a new car, these engines are built like tanks. They're better than some of the old JDM cars we love today, and can actually handle a decent amount of power without touching internals. FBO and a tune can get you to like 500 horsepower on the 2.0 Ts. All right, you can't really get there unless you turbocharge the 3.8 liter. Still, the 2.0 T is the one that everybody really wants anyway, and for good reason. They're rear-wheel drive, and I know this is kind of subjective, but I think it's just cool. I always like rear-wheel drive cars in general. I always put that in a good slot. But this one especially, since it is a newer car, and I think that most of new cars nowadays are actually going to like all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive, which is sad to see. And so I'm just happy that Hyundai was like, you know what, we're gonna make it rear-wheel drive anyway, because we know that sports cars are rear-wheel drive, and it just made me smile. Next is they have a really tight-knit community around them. This is something that's really cool about any kind of car. It always feels better when you have a lot of people around you that want to help you, that know things about your car, that are going to help you out and tell you the best mods to buy, and that's exactly what the Hyundai Genesis Coupe has. The Genesis Coupe community is massive, and they are always down to help you out, and it's really cool. Another thing about this car is that it is extremely cheap for what it is. It isn't cheap for like other cars. Like you could buy a 350Z and like for cheaper than a Hyundai Genesis Coupe, but you can find a good condition Genesis Coupe for under $10,000. And when you think about it, you're getting a 2010's car, a manual transmission, rear-wheel drive, 4 seats, and a pretty damn good number of horsepower, all for under 10K. It's a really good deal. But now it's time to get into the bad. First off is the mods for it are actually kind of slim. They have a lot of like cosmetic mods, but not the most when talking about engine mods, which does kind of suck. You can't really get a lot of like parts for this car if you want to make more power. On top of that, the cost of mods fluctuates like crazy. You can never really guess how much a part will actually cost. They're always like all over the place. Another thing about this car is almost everyone who owned one will have beaten on it, so going to look at them is always kind of a gamble. When your car company advertises it by showing it doing burnouts, my bad, you know people are going to beat on it. Like, they literally came out and were like, hey, look, this car can do burnouts. And so what's the first thing that everybody did when they bought it? Did burnouts. And so they've been beaten on, and so it's kind of tough to like find a really nice condition one. Another thing is, they aren't something that a lot of people know about. They aren't JDM and they aren't American Muscle, so not many people are diehard fans about them. On top of that, it is a Hyundai, which is a kind of boring brand for most of the time, and so you really aren't going to have a lot of people, you know, being like, oh, I love that Genesis, bro. There's going to be a lot more of, hey, what kind of car is that type of deal. And it's also kind of worrisome when talking about like the future and knowing how much the car will go for in the future. I don't know. I can't tell you if it's going to be more money or if it's going to depreciate. If I had to guess, though, I would say it's going to probably skyrocket in price. I think people are going to finally realize that it's a good car, but I don't know. It's kind of a gamble. Another thing is it has 4 seats, and even though those seats aren't the biggest, since it is a coupe, they still are there, and I like that about this car. I like my 350Z has 2 seats, and I like that fact. It feels more sporty, but having 4 seats is always a plus, especially in like a daily driver, and so it's very, very nice to have those in this car. Another thing is most of the cheaper ones are going to be autos, but even though they are autos, this is a newer car, so the autos are actually faster than the manuals, and most of them you still get the paddle shifters, which are actually pretty fun to use. I got to test drive a Genesis Coupe back when I was looking for a car, and I used the paddle shifters, and it was actually a blast. It does respond pretty well, and it does feel like you're in a little F1 car. Another thing is, and this is just something that I just thought was hilarious, is that it has fake parts. It has fake vents, and it's just kind of stupid, but they did it because they're Hyundai. But now it's time to get into the ugly, which there aren't many of, but they are kind of big deals. First off is it's kind of hard to tell when talking about the engine's reliability. These cars haven't been out for too long enough at least, to the point where everybody can tell like, oh yeah, that car's unreliable, or people can say, oh yeah, that car is reliable. And it's also kind of tough since, like I said, people have beaten on them a lot. It's kind of hard to tell, even the ones that have blown up. It's like, have they blown up because they're unreliable engines, or have they blown up because people were beating on them? Because most of the time when cars blow up and they're sports cars, it's not because the engine's unreliable. It's just because the owner is putting like 30 pounds of boost on a engine that can only handle 15, and so they're just like, oh well, we're gonna go. All right, we're leaving because you're mistreating me. And I honestly understand the car. You know, I respect that. And the last reason that I think the last ugly, my bad, I don't know why I was saying it like that. The last ugly is, for some reason, many people say that the manual transmission in one of these cars is actually extremely difficult to get like the hang of. Anyway, it's very hard to get good shifts out of it. I don't know why. It doesn't really make any sense. It is a Hyundai, so maybe that's why. But what I mean is, like, the smoothness of your shifts are going to be bad for the first couple of months, and that usually doesn't happen with most cars. I saw a couple of videos of like people driving them for the first time, and even these people who are seasoned like manual driver veterans, they still are like bucking and squealing. Another guy said that his dad, who's been driving nothing but manuals his whole life, stalled the first couple of times that he drove it, and that should never happen on somebody that's been driving it their whole life. And so that's kind of weird. Like, it doesn't mean that the transmission's bad per se, it just means that it's hard to get the hang of, and if you're going to learn how to drive manual on this car, it's going to be almost impossible. So that is the end of that good, the bad, and the ugly. And now, do I think here's the verdict on the car. I think if you need a daily driver, this actually isn't a bad choice. Even with those reliability concerns that we just talked about, they are still a newer car, and most likely the only reason that they're unreliable is because people are beating on them. Just keep in mind that it is rear-wheel drive, so if you live in a snowy area, it's going to be difficult. But with that being said, I think if you want your next project car, it's a great choice. I say this for almost all the good, the bad, and the uglies, but I mean it. They are so different, they're so unique. You can do stuff out there and actually be different and not like be copying everybody, which can't be said for more common cars like the 350Z or the WRX. Every time I put a mod on my 350Z, I feel like I'm just copying the next guy, since there's so many of them out there. The Genesis Coupe isn't like that. You can make your own Genesis Coupe that isn't going to look like everybody else's. On top of that, I think if you want a drift car, there are a lot of better choices. It sucks to say because I do love the Genesis Coupe. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful car. I want one. I really want one for a daily driver. But since this car it's heavy, it's got a long wheelbase, it's a coupe. It wasn't meant to be a race car. Coupes aren't really meant to be that quick, especially like these little 4-door Hyundais. It's just meant to be like a fun little track car, and drifting it is just going to be very tough compared to other options. I mean, it can be done. It is rear-wheel drive, and I've seen it before. I'm sure I'll have a video playing in the video of them drifting, but it's harder than if you were to just buy like an IS300 or a S13 or something like that. Those are better built for drifting. All right, but that is the end of this video. That is the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please like. Please, please, please subscribe. We're at, I think, 6,800. We are so close to 7,000 subscribers. That means the world to me. I cannot believe I'm saying that right now. It is crazy. I hope one day we can hit 10,000. That would be so cool. I'm not trying to be greedy. I'm just saying that it would be really cool. Anyway, guys, if you did enjoy and you like these good, the bad, the uglies, let me know what kind of car you want to see next, because the only reason why I do these good, the bad, the uglies is based off of your comments. If you guys tell me to do a car, I will do it. Just don't tell me a car that I've already done. I still have to make a playlist on them. I don't know why I haven't done that yet. I'll probably do that tonight just because I keep forgetting to. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I love each and every one of you. Tomorrow might be another top 10, but it might be a video of the drift event, the rest of the drift event, because I didn't get to do the whole video of that yet. So we'll probably do that. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Das Vidania, and have a nice bye.